Well, what's up, team? Hey, David here, and welcome back to another episode of Quarantine Catch Up. Today, I've got an awesome guest all the way from the West Coast. I'm coming to you from North Carolina. We've got Mr. Billy Ho, Senior Manager, Talent Mobility with Electronic Arts. Billy, how are you doing?
I'm doing very great. Thanks for having me, David. This is
Yeah.
an amazing series, and I encourage everybody to follow it.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that. That was a shameless plug for me and Quarantine Catch Up. So thanks, Billy. I really appreciate that. Thanks so much for joining me today. I know we are talking, before we started recording, and I was telling you, I just really look at this as an opportunity to, one, stay in touch with people, and two, to dig a little deeper, and learn about your story and how you got into the world of talent mobility and into relocation. So I'm excited to learn more about your story. I know you and I have crossed paths a couple of times, but we've never actually sat down and really had a conversation. So all it took was a global pandemic, for us to sit down together here virtually. So I'm looking forward to it.
It's a new norm. People are all getting used to it. I know when last talk, we basically met and you were introduced as the video guy, and I totally see why. Your video is amazing.
Thanks.
So I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah, me too. This would be great. Okay, cool. So I know I gave you a little preview leading up to our conversation, but we always start these videos off with what I'm calling a segment called the Fast Five. So 5 questions, not so hard-hitting questions that are just aimed at getting to know you a little bit better, getting to know your personality. So are you ready to begin the Fast Five, Billy?
All right, drum roll. I'm totally ready. Let's do
it. Bring it on. All right, let's go. Okay, so number 1 of the Fast Five. I thought this was kind of cool. I've heard this question before on different podcasts and interviews and things that I listen to, so I was interested to know your answer. Billy, if you're writing an autobiography, obviously based on your life, what's the title of your biography, the Billy Ho story?
Wow, that's a hard one. Just hasn't had that many years in my life so far to go for autobiography. But one of my motto in life, and I think that's what I will use for my title, is to stay golden. That to me is stay true to yourself, stay curious, be active. Just don't say no just for the reason of saying no. Stay true, stay curious, and just learn. That's part of the whole entire life journey, and that's how I always been operating.
I love that. So that's kind of a personal mantra of yours?
Yes, stay golden.
Yeah, I love it. I love the idea of, being a lifelong learner too. I mean, kind of to your point, like I'm a big reader and, I listen to a lot of podcasts and things like that. It's like, always, take the opportunity to learn. So I love it. That's great. That's a good one. I'll have to remember that one. That's great. That's awesome. Okay, cool. So I know you're in the Bay Area. What is your favorite restaurant in the Bay Area? Can you give me some tips?
Recently, that is called home cooking, and mainly myself, who are the one who's being the chef in the kitchen and cooking it for myself. So that's my favorite restaurant.
You had me going there for a second. I was like, that's a cool name for a restaurant. Home. Okay.
I have to say though, if it isn't because of the pandemic, I would definitely like to go back to Stinking Rose, which is a San Francisco restaurant that is specialized in garlic dish.
Really?
So everything that you order will have some form of shape of garlic in there. And not to say to bring a business meeting to Stinking Rose, because you definitely don't want to smell the breath after.
Right.
But just for you and your close one, and just enjoy that. The food over there is amazing.
That is awesome. Yeah, that's I really like that, and that's a good tip too. Not to maybe don't schedule a meeting after you go there, or maybe too. It shouldn't be like a first date spot.
Definitely should not. Talk about the first impression.
That's too funny. Well, excuse me here for a second, Billy. Let me make sure I'm not totally experienced. My screen went blank behind me. I'm looking at our questions in the back here. So, okay, sorry. Technical difficulties. So, okay, awesome. I like that pick.
That's all right.
Okay, so for number 3 of the Fast Five, obviously Electronic Arts, EA, just has, a ton of different games and a ton of different categories, sports, action, role playing, the whole thing. I'm a huge fan of those. Could you pick one that's like your ultimate favorite all time?
Oh wow, that's tough. As a gamer, I play almost every genre, every game, every type. So that's hard.
Okay.
If I have to pick one, I grew up with the EA game. It's called SSX Tricky.
Huh.
It's a snowboarding game where you do tricks on the screen, and you can do all sorts of tricks that you cannot really do in real life, only tricks not.
Yeah.
That actually evolved and there's a part to it that's coming out to the new game that's coming out called Skate. It's a skateboarding game that has, I know the crowd has been asking for it the past 10 years, and the recent EA Live event, they did a opening that says they will reinvest into Skate and remake the game. I was jumping out of my chair being super excited because, again, that's part of the game that I grew up with, and it's glad to see the next series. And so that's what I would say. I would say SSX Tricky in the skateboarding game.
Okay, that's a good answer. So are you, a skater yourself?
I wish I am. In my imagination, in my dream, I'm definitely a very, very pro skater. But in real life, I may not want to take that chance as much as I want to.
Yeah, fair enough. I think the older that we get, the less chances we want to take doing stuff like that.
And that's the reason why I play a lot of those video games and just put myself in their shoe and just imagine I can do it. So
I like it.
Through another avenue, able to satisfy my crave.
Okay, cool. Good answer. I like it. Okay, number four. This is, are you familiar with Would You Rather questions?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so it's always a tough choice, but go ahead.
Yep. So I like this one. Would you rather? So you have two choices. You have to pick one. Would you rather never have to sit in traffic again, ever, in your entire life, or never have to wait in line anywhere you go again? So we're talking, in line at security at the airport, or, to Disneyland, or to anywhere you could think of with a line. You go straight to the front, you walk right in, or the rest of your life, no traffic.
Funny how you asked that question, because that's what Bay Area is known for both waiting in traffic and waiting in line for everything.
Yeah, that's a good point too. No lines at restaurants, no lines for coffee. Yeah.
Ooh, that's super tough. I guess if I really had go with my gut feeling, I would rather not sit in traffic.
Okay. I think you would say
mainly because it's just so in the car sitting through traffic is just really, really hard because you really can't move that much.
Right.
Versus waiting in line, at least I can stretch my muscle or just stretch around, move around. At least that's a little perk.
Yeah, and that's a practical answer too. And I mean, normally when you're waiting in line for something, it's something that you really want to go do, or you're anticipating that, I guess. And so you could bear that, I think, a little easier. Where with traffic, traffic is like not productive for anybody. So I think you could save your life if you never had to be in traffic ever again.
Yes, and I guess that's the silver lining from the pandemic. While we're all working from home, I don't have to go through traffic to get to work.
That's true. That's a great perspective, Billy. That's for sure. Okay, last question, number five. Okay, if you were not in the talent mobility world, you had to start your career all over again. Okay, and there are no limitations here. Anything. What would you want to do?
Oh, there's quite a few things. Again, like we talked about earlier before the call, there's no such major of relocation or mobility in college. And I actually studied computer science before, which is completely irrelevant. But if I really have to pick something that I like to do, I would say I minor in psychology, so I would like to be a psychologist.
Yeah.
Because I'm always fascinated and interested in how just people think. And how we can speak in the same language, not literally the same language, but just being able to share the same mindset and same value and be able to connect with people. That's actually one of my passions as well, which is one of the reasons I continue in this space is because mobility has such a people value and everybody is as close as being a family.
Yes.
In the industry. And I'm always fascinated to learn about the others, how we can share the same value, share the same goal, and just move forward as an industry in the same pace. So I would say, long way around to answer your question, psychology is probably my other choice.
Well said, well said. And I'm sure, your studies in psychology, studying human behavior really helps in your role right now, I'm sure. Just from, I'm just a small sector of, relocation, talent, mobility in the household goods space. And, just in household goods, it is so personal. I'm sure that you have story after story, but it's just so personal. You're essentially boxing up people's lives and putting it into a giant metal container and sending it halfway across the world. So I like that answer. That's good. That's very, very pertinent. That's for sure.
And I wouldn't say the transportation and household good is just a jest. It's because it's such a big part of the relocation as well. We actually do it very, very big and very important, because every single part is as important to a person's relocation. Like you said, relocating the entire life. I personally relocated when I was still way back when. And, that experience was great in my mind, which is the reason why I want everybody to have that experience going into this field. And imagine if my experience was horrible. Chances are I won't be here speaking with you today, because I wouldn't have been in this space at all.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And Billy, that's an awesome segue. You must have done TV before, because that's a great segue, because that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I know we've talked about it before. I was really interested in, learning more about your personal journey and then also your career progression as well, and how you got into talent mobility. So why don't we go back to that? That when you mentioned you had moved previously, what was that like? Where did you move from?
So I originally born and was living in Hong Kong. I grew up in Hong Kong, and it was just one day decision that says, let's uproot ourselves and go somewhere else with the whole entire family. And we did exactly just that. So what that really means is, really, as a kid myself, when I relocated, it means I'm starting my second life. I'm starting it all over again. Friends, comfortableness, just knowledge about the area, absolutely zero. Starting it from ground zero. So imagine that, the fear that it builds into people if I didn't have that great of a relocation experience. And frankly, my parents relocated with their work, so I had actually experienced what mobility feels like as a kid. And I had a great experience, and that's the reason why. That's one thing that stuck in my mind, is that as I went into college, though I major in tax, which is interesting twist in life, but I always say that let your life meet you and just see what it brings you. Keep your mind open and just give it a try. And I major in tax. I came out. I got into PwC as after I got my CPA, because that's just progressionally that's what I should do, in a sense, to succeed, is to get my CPA license, and I did.
So even before college, were you always mathematically gifted? Is that kind of like what you lean towards, or?
I was always interested in math. I wouldn't say like mathematically gifted, because there's calculators. I just tend to leverage the tools to your best of the ability.
Does your brain work where math, obviously there's a definitive answer at the end? Does that kind of like your mode of thinking kind of lean that direction, I guess?
Right. There will always be steps, equations, and that's when you put in A, you can only get B into the engine, and that's just how my brain works.
Right. So when you did get to school, I know at UC Davis, right? And so when you guys moved, did you move to the Sacramento area, or were you in San Francisco area?
I was actually into the Bay Area. So started in Cupertino, then just basically moved around Bay Area until my time for my college decision. And I picked UC Davis.
What
mainly one of the personal reason was I just want to be away from the family. So I think that's a speaks true to maybe a lot of college kids picking colleges, just want to be away, but not too far away.
Sure, sure. Yeah, no, that was same for me. I went to college about 2 hours away from where I grew up, and so it was far enough where it was like, totally separate, my own world and new friends, experiences, the whole thing, but close enough where I could still, go back home whenever I wanted to and still have, my family there as well. So well, that's good. How far of a drive is it from, where you grew up to Davis?
Two plus hours.
Okay.
So really it's not that far.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you got there, did you always know that, you were going to go the financial route, or is that what you majored in, finance, or?
I majored in tax, very, very specifically into the niche. It just went way into tax. And I guess this is where my geekiness comes out is I'm always interested, again, with some minor in psychology, because I'm always interested in just behavior. Mm-hmm. I'm always interested in the way how I learn about the 3 rules in life is you live, you die, and you pay your taxes. And so yes. One of the 3 major things I focus on, one of the 3 major things is even it being one of the 3 major things, I'm surprised that a lot of people aren't comfortable talking about or just getting familiar with the idea of tax and personal tax in specific. And that just drove my motivation into studying tax and got out with a tax degree.
Yeah. That's so well said too. Cause I mean, there's only, I guess the old saying is, there's only 2 things certain in life, and that's death and taxes. Right. So that's great. And I love that line of thinking too, where it's like, to a lot of people, it's big, it's scary, it's confusing. And I love like where you're, kind of take the opposite approach where you're like, well, let's dig into this, let's learn more about this. I know I'm going to have to pay taxes every year. Like, how could I learn more and be more educated? That's fantastic. So coming out of UC Davis, you majored in tax. Was there any other, thinking for you other than working for one of the big 4? Did you always have your sights set on, one of the big 4 accounting firms?
I guess when I got out, I attended my CPA exam immediately just to try to get more certificate under my name, and that's what I did.
Yep.
Actually, I spent the first 6 months completely jobless, friendless, familyless. Everything is about CPA exam for those 6 months, and I did it. And afterwards, it is a very crucial and scary process, I have to say. I'm glad I did it. Never want to do it again, but I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
And the next best thing is to get the experience. And Big 4 at that time, even today, Big 4 is the best way for me to deepen the experience, deepen the knowledge, and just expand. And I got hired into actually the Global Mobility Tax Group. And really, that's how everything started, was doing personal tax for folks who are relocating or relocated or going on assignment. And
so
it just started growing from there, my career.
Yeah. So right off the bat, you're introduced to mobility, and you're doing personal tax returns for people that are moving back and forth. I'm assuming, we're clients of PwC?
Yep.
Okay. And so, when you get hired into that group, do you have any idea? I guess, it's one of those things where, for me at least, it's like I didn't really understand that these things existed as far as, talent mobility, global mobility teams. But once you get into it, you're like, well, of course that makes sense. I mean, they have to have teams to handle this because people move for their jobs. I mean, your family's a great example of that, right? You guys moved for an opportunity for a job here to the States. So did you have any, inclination, any idea of what mobility was before you got hired on there?
Nope. So that's why I was saying I'm surprised. This should become a major, mobility in college, just to get everybody kind of ready for it. But no, when I first joined the PwC as a tax mobility person, I knew tax, I knew personal tax. I never knew I had to know about all the other different countries' tax.
Right.
But when I got dropped into it, I was super fascinated because I know a lot of my friends who live abroad and travel abroad, and all of this applies to right back to my personal life and to social circle. And it just works out. And that even fueled my motivation and my curiosity even more. And it's always been an upward trend from there on.
Yeah, yeah. So remind me, how long did you spend at PwC?
8 years,
Wow.
8+ years.
Yeah. And so that's pretty significant. I mean, I've been, and we're obviously Transportation Worldwide, we're much smaller than PwC, but, I've been with TWW for just over 13 years. And so even for yourself to be with an organization for 8 years, in kind of our generation, we're pretty similar in age. That's pretty rare for you to stay on, that long. You don't see that very often. What kept you there at PwC that long?
The experience and the opportunity that I could meet more people, make more friends, and just being able to help people understand the mystery of mobility, or the mystery of tax field specifically in mobility. That fueled my motivation and my passion, really.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we're transitioning over to the opportunity with EA, and a lot of times I hear, as far as like folks that going into the Big Four, a lot of times goals are eventually to get to that corporate side, to get to the client side. Was that ever in your mind at all? Did you see yourself going, to the client side, or how did this opportunity come up?
Opportunity came up because I would say that I was working with some of the EA folks before indirectly, and therefore that has always gotten me to think. I can keep an open mind about other opportunities, because I just want to learn. So once I got out from the service provider side and went into the industry, and that opportunity just presented itself, and I took on with the expectation that I will continue to learn more from a different perspective. And I just want that full view, full life circle of mobility. And that's how I got in.
Right. Do you think, you coming from, PwC, does that give you, a more rounded perspective, you think, as far as if you were just to go directly into industry or directly onto the corporate side?
Definitely. It's always a different perspective. You can pick up and learn different things and experience different knowledge and just deepen your knowledge base. Yeah. So I guess either way, either going from industry to a service provider, or service provider, vice versa to industry, I think you can just learn from different perspective. And that's fueling what I like to focus on, is to learn more.
Yeah.
That gave me the opportunity to learn more.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, that really goes back to the theme, that we talked about earlier, golden. I mean, just continuing to being open to learning. And, I really like the idea. I'm not sure if you've heard this term before, but the idea of blooming where you're planted. Have you ever heard that before?
Mm-hmm.
So really the idea is, obviously a flower or a tree, they can't get up and go somewhere. I think today, and especially, in our culture, the grass is always greener, right? There's always other opportunities out there. Oh, I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I should go do that. But I really like the idea of blooming where you're planted. So doing great work, where you are right now. Another way to say it is being great where your feet are, and that kind of reminds me of your story of just, being present and continuing to be open to learning, doing a good job, and just being open.
Yeah. Stay engaged, stay active, stay curious. Those three things can get you far enough to become a tree from when you first get planted.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. So, Billy, I really appreciate you taking the time. Thanks so much. Just in closing, what advice would you have for kind of the younger generation, even though I think you and I are both kind of in our young to mid 30s, folks coming out of men and women coming out of college, and they're entering into the workforce, whether it's on the client side or the supplier side. If they do have a desire to get to the client side at some point, what advice would you give to that person?
I would say couple of words from my mentor who gave me encouragement to take on different opportunity is, again, to stay curious, stay open-minded, never give up, never just say no for the sake of saying no. Is give it a try, and what's the worst that can happen? Is the way how he said it, and I love it because that is so true to heart. What is the worst that can happen? Just give it a try.
Yeah. I love it. That's great. Awesome. Great advice, Billy. Again, I really appreciate you taking the time to catch up with me. For Billy Ho, I'm David Bunnell. Great catching up with you guys. Take care.